I am Michael Bain, and welcome to Triggered, coming to you, of course, from Dragon House Studios at the secret hidden bunker in the Rocky Mountains, and brought to you this week by our good friends at Rock Island Armory. Today, I want to talk about a project that, yes, is finally coming close to completion and is shootable and really, I think, really cool. This is a Rossi Ranch Hand mare's leg rifle that has been legally converted to a short barrel rifle. Well, let me explain what I mean there very quickly so no people call me up and go like, are you nuts? What are you doing? Basically, I went through the process to register this gun as a short barrel rifle. And as a mare's leg, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few, but it came with this stock on it. So it was legally a pistol. That means that the receiver itself had never been built into a rifle, but had originally been built into a pistol. So that made it legal to sell in the United States. Rossi, of course, the Rossi Ranch Hand. Henry has mare's legs. Chiappa sells mare's legs. So I went through the process to SBR this, to turn this into a short barrel rifle. And I think what you're going to find fascinating is now, finally, the electronic Form 1s are up, working, readily available. A Form 1 is what you have to file to tell the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms that you're going to build a control weapon. Short barrel rifle, short barrel shotgun, suppressor. So you can now fill that out online, which I did. You have to submit a picture. Of course, I just took a digital picture with my camera. I ran it through a passport picture processor to get it exactly right, uploaded that. I had to have my fingerprints taken and send the fingerprints card to ATF. But here's the interesting thing. One Saturday afternoon, I filled out the form. I've been putzing around with doing this a couple of dozen times. Originally, I was going to go through Silencer Central, then they stopped doing Form 1 submissions. So the electronic system went down, and now it's back up. So I said, let me just see. I have an account with ATF. So I went through, I filled out the form. There's a number of different help, both videos and written help for filling out that form on the internet. I filled it out, and then you have to wait for ATF to notify you that the form has been filled out correctly, and you need to, within 10 days, forward your fingerprints. Well, literally 2 hours after I filed the form, I got a notice from ATF that it had been filled out correctly, and I needed to send my fingerprints. I sent my fingerprints in, had my good friend at Tall Guns, who does my FFL transfer, did my fingerprints, we sent them in, and 22 days later, I got my tax stamp. I got a paper that marked stamped approved and a tax stamp that I could go forward with building a short barrel rifle. So I took off the little stubby pistol grip, and I replaced it with a Boyd stock, straight stock for 1892 rifle. This is Boyd wood, front and back, thus creating a short barrel rifle. Now, we instantly made a short barrel rifle. Before I put this stock on, I had it engraved. It's engraved on the other side. It has to be engraved with your name and the address, your physical address of where the gun was made. There's some question as to whether you need to do that on a gun you're not going to sell, but really, whenever you talk about federal law, err on the side of caution. So what we have here is a 12-inch barrel, 6-shot, 44 Magnum, 1892 clone made by Rossi, and it is cool. We'll go in a little next segment, we'll go into a little bit more of the things I did with it, but originally I was going to turn this into a tricked out tactical lever gun until I put it together. And then I thought, you know, I wonder how many original Winchesters were made with 12-inch barrels. 5. All 5 have exemption letters from ATF because they were made way back when. It was a common thing. We'll talk about that in the next segment too. But 5 original Winchesters were made with a 12-inch barrel. We'll be back with more Triggered in just a moment. Welcome back to Triggered, where we're talking about my Winchester 1892 clone, a Rossi Ranch Hand converted to a short barrel rifle. Now, one of the other things you notice that obviously isn't stock here is this sighting system. I knocked out the buckhorn sight, which is dovetailed in. Buckhorn sight was the biggest buckhorn sight I've ever seen. You could put it on a howitzer. And then use this bottom plate from Doug Turnbull Restorations, which fits into the dovetail and locks down and mounts this Trichicon RMR on it. Because I actually see this gun as maybe the greatest hog hunting gun ever made in the world. I actually was curious as to how many 12-inch Winchester Model 2s were actually made, because both Winchester and Marlin sold what we would think of now as short barrel rifles, anywhere from 16, 15, 14, down to 12-inch. Well, it turns out that Winchester originally made 5 of the 12-inch ones. They made, I think, almost 1,000 of the 14-inchers or 10,000 of the 14-inchers. But the 12-inchers, they made 5. All 5 have exemption letters from the ATF, which you must have to possess one of these guns. And last year at Rock Island Armory, one of the 5 sold for $75,000. Nice trick, that. I want to go to a regular size loop, exactly like you would see on a standard 1892. This is also a Brazilian 1892. It's 38 357, but this is the standard size loop versus that great big loop that you see on this. While short barrel rifles were pretty common, the loop itself is pure Hollywood. It was invented in 1939 for the John Wayne movie Stagecoach and became his signature gun because he could spin it. Then in the 50s, when the Rifleman came out, he was always spinning in 1892. Mare's Leg, 1957, invented for Wanted, Dead or Alive, the Steve McQueen vehicle, Josh Randall, the bounty hunter. And I think what makes this gun so great is it points super. It's a 44 Magnum. I've run essentially what I think of as my training 44 Magnum rounds to it. They're Fiocchi 240 grain jacketed saw point. They're full bore 44 Magnum rounds, and I don't see the recoil as particularly significant. My favorite short barrel 1892 story is Sasha Shamel. And he was a Latvian, moved to the United States, immigrated to Argentina, and became the most famous jaguar hunter in the world. Immortalized in the 1928 book, Green Hell, and a few years later, El Tigre. He hunted jaguars with a spear and sometimes a gun, but he had a short barrel 1892 fitted with a long bayonet, so one or the other would work. One quick item, this guy here, this is a trapper carbine. Many of the short barrel guns went to the Northwest for trappers and were used pretty common. Both the 1892s and like this is an 1894 trapper. Same thing with this saddle ring on it. And what was the saddle ring for? Well, you could put a piece of leather through it and then throw that over the pommel horn of the saddle to carry it. Or what it was really for is, remember the trend that everybody loved for a while for single point slings? Single point sling, basically you clip this to this. And with it hanging here, you notice the noise I made we're touching it. You can hook this into an AR and then bring it up quickly, drop it, and be able to access your handgun. You can also hook it into that saddle ring. And that's really how the saddle rings were mostly used. Essentially, the single point sling. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about your best defense. See you in a second. This week's Triggered is brought to you by Arms Corps, Rock Island Armory. What's your passion? Taurus USA, always ready, always bring it. Stoger, everyday tough. SDS Imports and the Thesis PX9. Thesis means quality. Hunter's HD Gold. They change so you don't have to. What I want to talk about today in our Your Best Defense segment is reality. And to be honest, reality can be a bitch. We all operate under what you might think of as a normalcy bias. What's happened in the past is what's likely to happen in the future. Say, for instance, 4th of July parades. We've been having Independence Day parades pretty much since Independence Day. Tens of thousands of parades. And so we don't typically think first thing that somebody might shoot up the parade. However, in the world we live in now, which is in essence that the United States is in the middle of what amounts to a cold civil war, you can see it in the level of violence. You can see it in the huge rise in murders in urban areas, the rise of violent crimes, even in the suburbs and rural areas. That reality tells us we need to look at the world differently than we might have looked at it in the last of the glory days, say Christmas 2019. With that new reality, we have to jerk ourselves out of a normalcy bias. What we want is to say, we want to take our kids to a parade. We want to go to all these great big places where there are lots of people because they've always been safe in the past. But my question is, are they safe now? It's easy to say that you want to do something or show your family something, just like when you were growing up in 1962. But 1962 is gone, long gone, vanished. So when we talk about situational awareness in the new world we're living in, we have to step beyond normalcy bias and say, do I want to be in this big crowd of people? And if the answer to that is yes, where do I want to be in this big crowd of people? How might I be able to get my family out if something happens? Now what you're saying is, boy, this kind of sucks. This isn't the world we signed up for. This isn't the world we want to hand down to our children, to the future. Well, as I said in the beginning, reality is a bitch. Reality doesn't care. What you need to do is think in terms of what are the risks of a situation that I might take my family into, and then you need to do those things that would lessen that risk. In this case, it's either don't go or place yourself in a situation well back from the crowd where, if necessary, you can move yourself and your family out pretty quickly. So that's this week's The Best Defense. Sometimes you have to say things that, gosh, you really don't like to say, and this is one of those cases. I'm Michael Bain. This is Triggered. You can find us on michaelbain.tv, where we are always free. And michaelbain.tv, with all our back triggers, all our back podcasts, is one of the best resources for high-quality firearms information on the internet. You can also find the show on YouTube and on Rumble. This week brought to you by Rock Island Armory, and we will see you next week.